everyone. My name is Father Jacob Rouse, and I'm the pastor of Notre Dame Parish in Cresco, Iowa.
And I'm Father Kevin Earlywine, pastor of St. Patrick's in Hampton and St. Mary's in Ackley.
Welcome to the Dubuqueristic Revival Podcast.
Because that's the name we're going with.
Father Kevin, what happened last time? We had a very exciting episode.
Oh, yeah. For those who haven't listened, our first 3 episodes were kind of all about journey in faith. And so we talked about the vision of Journey in Faith. We talked about evangelization, which is one of the priorities of Journey in Faith. And we talked about the pastoral plan, one of the other priorities of Journey in Faith. So we encourage you, if you haven't listened to those, go listen to those 3. They're kind of connected. But today, we're shifting gears a little bit.
What are we talking about?
Today, this episode should be being released in the beginning of October.
Mhm.
October 4th is the feast day of one of my favorite saints, St. Francis of Assisi. So in fact, today we're going to be talking about Franciscan spirituality. But, Father Jacob, did you know? I mean, many times when people think of Franciscan friars, they think of the guys with the brown hoods and think you have to join a monastery and such. But did you know that right here in the Archdiocese, we have lay people that are part of Franciscan spirituality groups right here in the Archdiocese? You don't have to run away, join a monastery to join in Franciscan spirituality.
Wow, I didn't know that. Right here in the Archdiocese. And here I thought he just loved animals a lot.
Yep. There's a lot more to St. Francis than that. So.
Oh, well, I think we're going to learn about it. So it's a hidden gem right here in our Archdiocese and probably all over the world, actually.
I love St. Francis, Father Jacob, because as you may know, as you recall, and some of our listeners may or may not know, but I spent a little time with some Franciscans myself, so that spirituality resonates with me. And I only in the last year learned we have some Franciscan spirituality groups in the Archdiocese, and it fascinated me so much that that's kind of what inspired me. One of the things that inspired me to relaunch with you Dubuqueristic Revival Season 2. So I was like, man, we have these neat things that exist in our Archdiocese that I didn't even know about, and so others probably don't either. So we wanted to share the word. So today, I think we have some special guests with us to talk about these Franciscan spirituality groups. So we have Deacon Jim Wolf and Rosie Guerrero. So I'll invite you to introduce yourselves, who you are, and where you're at, what you do in the Archdiocese.
Go ahead, Rosie.
All right. Thank you, Deacon. I'm Rosie Guerrero. I am in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I actually teach at Columbus High School in Waterloo. I teach theology there. And I am part of the Sisters of St. Francis Franciscan Associates in Dubuque.
I'm Deacon Jim Wolf, and I live in Mason City. And I'm a deacon in the Archdiocese for the Archdiocese of Dubuque. And I am a member of the Secular Franciscan Order.
Secular.
Yes, secular.
Like secular music, right?
Yes. So when we talk about secular, basically, usually what people think of is non-religious or non-church. In this sense, secular means lay people and diocesan clergy that are not in a religious order. So it's a little bit more specific differentiation with that.
Yeah, so to reference the image Father Kevin made earlier is that when we think of a Franciscan or a monk of any kind, we think of someone who lives maybe in a big castle in Italy and wears robes. So you're saying that there's different levels or I guess intensities of being a Franciscan. Is that correct?
And there are Franciscan friars, and they live in friaries, and they are more in the communities traditionally than the monasteries were. So when Francis of Assisi founds the Franciscan order, and actually we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but his idea was to live in the community, in your friary, obviously, but during the day they would go out and do things in the community, and then at night come back and pray together and eat together and have fellowship together.
The first order of business is there is a first order of Franciscans.
There is. There are 3 orders of Franciscans, and the Franciscan order was founded by a lay person. Francis of Assisi was not a priest. He, after the order was recognized by the Pope, they did ordain him a deacon so he could preach at masses. But Francis himself this started as a lay movement. So there's 3 orders. The first order are friars, and they can either be priests or lay brothers. And the reason he used the term friar was the idea of being humble and being lesser. So friar would be like a little brother or a little father, if you look at the Italian from it. The second order are nuns, N-U-N-S, not having none. And those are the 4 clares that were founded by Clare of Assisi, and they are actually cloistered. So if they live in a monastery, and they are cloistered in the monastery. Then we have the third order, and the third order is divided into 2. The first part of it is the third order regular, and that would include friars and lay brothers who live in friaries, and that's where we get all our religious Franciscan sisters too. So, for example, the Dubuque Franciscan sisters. And then the other part of that is the secular Franciscans, who started life as the brothers and sisters of penance, and it eventually evolved into secular Franciscans. And so what that means is that we live a normal life. We live with our families in our communities, and then we come together and meet in community, and pray together and learn together and have fellowship. So that's what we do as secular Franciscans.
Wow, so that's something actually I have forgotten, that St. Francis started out as a layperson. And just for the benefit of the audience, a layperson is someone who's not ordained a priest. That means probably a majority of you listening right now, you are all lay people, and that's where we kind of get the phrase in layman's terms. Not that you're lesser or anything, but it just kind of goes to show that St. Francis was a regular guy, just like all of us are just regular people that God calls to something.
Yes, he started this as a personal faith journey, and we probably aren't going to get into depth, but with his life, and you can read about it. There's many books about him and biographies about him. But he started it. He had a conversion experience, and this conversion experience kept drawing him closer and closer into it. And he had about 3 years or so of this conversion experience before he started gathering followers, or they actually started gathering to him.
So just to recap, there's the first order, which are Franciscan friars, like you imagine, living in community in a friary, praying and working and cooking. Then you got the second order, which is the poor clares, and these are all female, and they're nuns, N-U-N-S. Then you've got the third order, which is people who are living as Francis envisioned, but blended into the world, right?
Well, there's the 2 parts. There's the third order regular, who are the sisters and the friars, and then there's the third order secular, who are the lay people and clergy, diocesan clergy, who are secular Franciscans. So one diocesan clergyman from France who has ties with Dubuque was a part of the secular Franciscan order, and I'll give you a guess if you want to guess who that is.
Is it St. John Marie Vianney?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
10 points for Father Kevin. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. He the secular Franciscan order was seen as a response in Italy and France and Spain and the other parts of Europe and the United States as a response to this new modernism in society, and this moving away from the church, because now you had people that were in the church or that were living in society that were still part of a order. And the first order and the third order, the sisters and the friars, they go out, and a lot of the friars will serve the poor or have some other type of mission where they are serving people that are less fortunate. So there's a balance between what Francis wanted was a balance between they had the first 12 guys, and then after I think a year and a half, they started getting more and more. But they would go work during the day, they would either beg for their food, or they would simply go and work for a farmer or somebody just as a day laborer and beg for food. And then they come back, and like I said, they would pray together, they would eat together, and they lived in community.
Yeah, so I understand that there's three. We have three of these secular Franciscan groups right here in our own archdiocese. Can you say a little bit about them, and then how did you, Deacon Jim Wolf, become affiliated with the one you're affiliated with?
Yes, we have 3 fraternities in the Archdiocese of Dubuque, and then there's 2 more that are down in the Des Moines area. So we have one in Dubuque, we have one in Waterloo, Cedar Falls, which is St. Mary Fraternity, and that's the one I started with about 2.5 years ago. And then we have a new group in Mason City, St. Bonaventure Fraternity, and we were founded by long-term members of St. Mary's that have been driving down to Cedar Falls for years, and we're living up in the Cerro Gordo County and Mason City area. I got started, I got a cold call from one of the people in the, before Bonaventure was officially founded, from the St. Mary Fraternity, and they were looking for they were looking for clergy in the Archdiocese to serve as a spiritual advisor. And you could think of that as a chaplain. And the first choice for spiritual advisors are the friars. But diocesan deacons and priests can also be them, and so can a secular Franciscan if you really can't find anybody. But that is our connection that helps us connect with the Franciscan order. So I tried it out. I kept coming back. I have some Franciscan blood in my family. One of my mom's cousins, Sister Janet May, is a Dubuque Franciscan sister. So I grew up knowing about that. And then as I was learning about this and talking with my mom and emailing Sister Janet, I found out there's another 8 or 9 Dubuque Franciscan sisters in the family if you go back another 3 generations. So I'd be the 4th generation Franciscan in my mom's family tree.
Wow.
And as a deacon, it called to me by, the deacon, one of the things we do is we help people that are poor, we help people that need help. And there's a lot of, the diaconate has a lot of overlap with Franciscan spirituality.
Yes, because the diaconate has a lot to do with humility and service, as did St. Francis. There's some have speculated if St. Francis himself was ever ordained a deacon or not. There's some unclear things, but I've heard whether he was or wasn't that his spirituality very much embodies that sort of diaconal spirit.
Yeah,
stooping to wash the feet of the disciples.
Yes, and it was all about humility for him and being humble and serving other people. He was probably, they think he was ordained a deacon because he could preach at Mass. They lost the details of where and when have been lost to time. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to St. Francis that's more of him out in nature. He was praying and fasting, and he had these encounters with lepers in and around Assisi, and he was serving the lepers, and that's when he had one of his first transformative experiences. So as he was doing that eventually got worked into a way of life over time.
Yeah.
And the big part about being a secular Franciscan is we have the saying, gospel to life and life to gospel. So what we try to do is we live the gospel in a Franciscan manner according to our rule. So we have a rule for the Franciscan order. It was approved by the Pope. The last version was approved by Pope Paul VI, who is also a secular Franciscan.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. So was John the 23rd and the 6 popes before that, going back to Leo the 13th.
Wow.
So and I mean, this is an ancient order. So there's been, if you ever try to look at the history of the whole Franciscan order, there's all this stuff going on in different places. But the secular Franciscan order, it's part of the 3rd order, so it is global, just like the other 2 orders. So we actually have our local fraternities, and that's our where we practice our way of life. We support each other, pray together, and have food and fellowship together. And then there's the regional level, and then the national level, and the international level. So I've been able to go to 2 regional meetings up in the Twin Cities at a Franciscan retreat house. And so it's a neat opportunity to meet other secular Franciscans and talk with them how it's going in their fraternities and their lives.
Mm-hmm. So there's much we could say about St. Francis and Franciscan spirituality. And that's interesting. Yeah. And we have these 3 secular Franciscan fraternities, I guess, is that the proper
Yes.
term within the Archdiocese of Dubuque.
3 local fraternities.
You also mentioned, Deacon Jim Wolf, these Dubuque Franciscan sisters that you have some relatives who've been a part of. And this might be a good pivot then to Rosie, our other guest with us. She is an associate of the Dubuque Franciscan Sisters. So sort of like these secular Franciscan groups, but maybe something a little different. So Rosie, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Franciscan group you're associated with that's not one of these 3 secular Franciscan fraternities, but something else in the Franciscan family?
Yeah, of course. Happy to. So I am a Franciscan associate with the Sisters of St. Francis in Dubuque, as you already mentioned. And the sisters, basically, as an associate, you're tied to a religious order. You're walking with them, learning about their charisms, their spirituality. And so you, at least for me, when I was invited to join the group, it was a 2-year process for us. And so what kind of just began as an invitation to learn more about St. Francis, learn about St. Clare over that 2 years with a group of people that I personally hadn't known at the time, has grown into a commitment to live out those charisms in my daily life and embrace them. Similar to what Deacon said, living out the gospel regularly, just bringing that into who you are, building that spirituality, but also like growing in community. I think that's kind of the tie there, is just having that community, having that commonality of the saints that we're drawn to because of the way they lived and their life, and so for me, yeah, it was 2 years. As I mentioned before, I was invited. It was a teacher that's now retired from Columbus. She said, you seem to live sort of that life already, and so this might be something that you would enjoy. And so I just remember it was I want to say it was either 2017 is I think when we started our group. It was myself. We had a sister, Meg Gummer from the Sisters of St. Francis there in Dubuque. She actually would drive to us. And then we had another associate who was one of their very first. If I remember correctly, she's been an associate for 30 years. So they've been figuring this out and doing this for quite some time. And it was myself, the teacher that invited me that's now retired, her name's Pat Wiss, and then 2 other folks who started out friends, and they've since gotten married. And so it was kind of a fun little journey on that. But we spent 2 years together. The Sisters of St. Francis, they've put together what they call that Franciscan way of life. So it's kind of like a program so that those that choose to, explore this as something that they might choose to incorporate into their life, kind of all are receiving the same formation, if you will. And so we spent 2 years learning about St. Francis, just talking, diving in, those discussions. We can't learn everything, right? And that's part of the joy, I think, in being an associate is we all, as a group, decided to become associates in the fall of 2019. And so we were commissioned in Dubuque there with the sisters. So, they were invited, and there were several other associates. So we had our group in Waterloo, but then there are other areas within diocese, even some over all the way to Western Iowa, that have these groups that are going through the Franciscan way of life. And so, in that fall, we were commissioned. We make a yearly commitment. There's a contract that, we essentially agree to, because we are part of the religious order in a way. So we have what we call gatherings. So in the fall and in the spring, we get together. The associates invited to come out to the sisters there in Dubuque and spend the weekend with them. We're learning about what is going on in the community. We've been a part of kind of this transition of our religious sisters are aging out, and some of these orders, what's the longevity there? So we've been a part of that conversation and kind of walked with them in that. So beyond kind of those gatherings with them, we, as the smaller Franciscan Way of Life group that we started, we've added another person to our group who just went through the journey herself of choosing to become associates. So we gather once a month in community. We kind of have these readings that we go through, or books that we'll read, and kind of just discussions, but also, how are we supporting each other in living out the values and the spirit of St. Francis.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have so many questions. This is really cool. The first thing I want to highlight is that you both talked about an invite or a cold call, but you were both invited, and someone within called without and invited you to be in it. And I think that's really powerful. That's like how evangelization works. Check episode 2. But what if they already saw you living these things normally, why join? Like, why not just keep doing what you're doing and call it good?
I think, as humans, we're social beings. We need each other. We need accountability. We need support, especially in the spiritual life. So I think that was part of it. We're growing in this together. We get to learn from each other, gain different perspectives, especially because I think I would say that in our group, even though it's like 5 that regularly are together, we all probably are drawn to different aspects of who St. Francis was, right? Or what called us in. And so, we're just walking with each other as well. So I think big part was that community aspect and just needing people, being in communion with them.
And you also mentioned a commitment. And I think, whether you're entering into marriage or whether you're entering into priesthood or being a teacher, there's honestly rules and commitments and boundaries with pretty much everything we do in life, even a sport or a music hobby. There's certain rules that we follow. And it sounds like this is not just another hobby, but it sounds like that's some formal commitment that gives you meaning and gives you purpose.
Yes, it's a way of living your life. And then the community helps support each other. So when Rosie was talking about her formation and everything, our program is, we're kind of on parallel paths, I think. And there's a formal education process or journey where people are given an orientation, and then you move into after 3 months, and you move into the inquiry phase, and then eventually the candidacy phase. So eventually, after 3 months, 9 months, and then a year and a half to 2 or 3 years for candidacy, you can profess. And so I was welcomed into the order, and then about a little less than a year from now, I'll be able to do my profession at a mass. And we just had one for one of our longer term members, and she professed at a mass right here in Mason City, and the ceremony was part of the mass. But it really is about supporting each other. One of the things that we do is continuing education. So we're always having a book that we read. We always read the Gospel of the day. We meet on Sundays, so we pick the Gospel of the week, and we read through it, and then we talk a little bit about it. And then the second thing that we do is we get out our rule, and we look and see how can we apply this to our rule. And we talk about, well, this is rule number 2, or this is rule number 4. we're going to observe the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to, or number 5, we're seeking to encounter the active person of Christ in your brothers and sisters. So maybe it's about Jesus serving the poor. So we're talking about, okay, how can we do that in our lives? And one of our apostolates is working at the local community kitchen, which would be like a soup kitchen. And we do that once a month. But yeah, it is. It's about Francis wanted his followers to be in community because he knew that made them stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you get all communitied out, like Miss Guerrero? Is that what your students call you?
They do, yes. Or Miss G.
Miss G, that's cool. I like that. Miss G, you've got your community of your teachers and your staff. You've got your parish. You've got your students. And then now you've got your Franciscan community. I mean, don't they? And you're married too, Deacon Jim. Then you've got your deacon brotherhood. How do those all connect or overlap?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're communitied out. I don't know. I think it's, just they kind of serve different aspects, right? They serve different areas of your life. But in it, we are modeling our faith, I think that's the overlap there is, I get to talk to my students about what it is to be an associate, or, this is how I serve, sometimes it's not easy to do that alone, right? So you have a community to go out and serve a meal at the Catholic Worker, right? But it's important to be there for each of those groups, right? We're all called to help each other get to heaven, and bringing some of those parts of our spirituality or who we are on display in those different groups, like kind of ties that together, I think, for us. I know for me, it's an easier opportunity being a teacher, talking about it, being part of a Catholic Worker as well, helping in different areas there. But I mean, if we love God, right, and we truly come to know him, which St. Francis teaches us, I mean, he always was trying to strive to know him more deeply, right? It's just going to exude. And so, like, how can you not be a part of so many different groups that, are able to receive that love?
It's a calling. It's a charism. It's a vocation, just like everyone's called to be either single or married. And then also, you have the subsets of that off of that. But and I've been told I have a Franciscan temperament.
That's a compliment, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Although Francis was a very passionate person. I mean, once he wanted to do something, he did it. It's the idea of it's rounding out these different areas of my life and enriching these different areas of my life with, my marriage and being a deacon and work. I happened to work at the parish in Mason City, and I was a teacher and a school counselor before that. So it's really what happens is you kind of go into your monthly meeting, and I mean, there's the readings outside the meeting and everything. And then we're strengthened to go back out into the rest of our lives. And so it helps strengthen us and it helps enrich the rest of our lives.
Wow.
So we have, we're all part of the same Catholic Church, the same, and so same Christian umbrella, we might say spirituality. But I think what sometimes people don't realize or appreciate, but that we are so blessed within the treasure trove of our faith, is there are so many within the umbrella of Catholic or Christian spirituality. There are these other spiritualities, right? We have Franciscan, we have Carmelite, we have Dominican spirituality, we have many others as well, Benedictine. So I would say, so I guess the question I want to pose here, we've been kind of touching on this a little bit, but just I throw out the question both to you, Rosie and Deacon Jim, just if someone were to ask you, what is Franciscan spirituality? Obviously it's associated with St. Francis, but just like in your own words, kind of your pithy summary, what would you sort of summarize is, or how would you describe Franciscan spirituality?
I'd like to talk about for a moment the connections with the different religious orders.
Mm-hmm.
Francis grew up, and he would have had Benedictines at Assisi. There was a monastery right there in Assisi.
Mm-hmm.
His first 3 churches that he was taking care of were basically satellites of the monastery, and they allowed him to repair them,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually live by and near them. And he also had interactions with Saint Dominic. They met in Rome at the Fourth Lateran Council, and there's a legend or a story about when they met. Francis gave Dominic his cord and his cincture, and he, in some ways, became the first Franciscan cord bearer. And some lay people are called cord bearers because they'll wear a cord or a cincture underneath their clothes. So really, when you start looking into this, and I've seen connections with some of Saint Ignatius of Loyola with some of the Jesuit things, and you see some Franciscan threads in there, because his teachers would have been his teachers were Franciscans when he was growing up, and he was around them. So they're all interconnected in a way, but they're all have a separate calling.
No, I was just gonna add, I guess, so many things come to mind because I think St. Francis served so many. I mean, we've mentioned that, it's not just about the animals, but also just like his love for the poor and the vulnerable. And so just, I don't know, for me, Franciscan spirituality is just living that out regularly, taking his example in the many areas that he served, and just, trying to maybe live simply as part of it, but also just deepening my relationship with Christ and his example, right? Continuously turning to him and trying to build my relationship with him through his example of loving people no matter what, of being willing to sacrifice. So, I don't feel like I can necessarily encompass it, because I think it kind of means something different to each individual. But ultimately, I think it just comes to knowing God deeply and intimately, and then be able to live that out in those different areas. Because I know for me, creation is huge, just taking care of God's creation, and I know Francis cared about that as well. I mean, if you read any of his prayers and how he speaks of Mother Earth and Brother Moon, you see that he truly had an appreciation. So to know who God is that intimately, kind of is what it speaks to me in that way, I suppose.
Yeah, Francis was a mystic. I mean, he loved Jesus. Franciscanism provides me with focus in the way I practice my Catholicism. Part of it is the participating in your local parish and in the sacramental life is very important. In reconciliation and in receiving communion and being in the parish life and serving other people, which as a deacon, that, like I said, those 2 ways of life have really overlapped a lot. It's not always about us. It's about God and this gift of the Father's love. And one of the reasons we see so many stories about Francis in nature is he was able to see God's creative ability and love in all of nature and all of our environment around us. So that's why you see the things about him. I mean, he looked and he would look out and see the birds and the trees and everything else, and he would see this is God's creation, and that would remind him of God. So for him, nature was a conduit to get to God. It wasn't the end, but it was hey, this is a way for me to focus on God's love and what I can do with that.
I like how you use the word focus. That I think that's what spiritualities help us to do, is they help us to there's so many dimensions or aspects to the profundity of the Christian faith and the mystery of God and the mystery of Christ, right? And what these individual spiritualities help us to do is kind of we're all gonna there's gonna be certain dimensions or aspects of the Christian mystery that are going to resonate with us more deeply. And I think, as you said, like that these spiritualities help us to kind of focus in on certain aspects or dimension for that kind of give us a focus and direction.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I carry around my little secular Franciscan rule booklet with me. It's not very big. It fits in my pocket. And it's just, as I read through it, every day, pieces of it, it's like, oh, yeah, it's reminders. I should be going in this way. I'm a little too proud in what I was doing, and I need to be a little more humble, or whatever that is. With my family here at the parish, it does. It provides focus, and it's also been a fascinating. I was a history teacher, and it's just fascinating reading about Francis and the three orders, and there's so many stories there, and there's just so much more to him than the statue in somebody's garden. And that's good. That's good, but there's just this. He was a very passionate person, and he was very strict with himself. And there's a story about early on, they just had the 12. One of the brothers was trying to fast, and they wanted to be holy, and he literally woke up crying with pain one night, and Francis got them all together and said, all right, you guys got to eat. And I think this is an example for me of our practices, whether it's the rosary, Franciscanism for me, any of our devotions in the church, we need to remember that it's not the devotion itself that's important. That devotion is the vehicle for us to deepen our relationship with Christ, to deepen our relationship with God. And sometimes it's easy to let the devotion itself get in the way. That's the important thing, where that leads me. And it's the other thing is it's changed me. You look at anybody, any of the saints, once they have that first experience, that transformative experience. So it's going to change us too.
And lest anyone accuse you all of just sitting around and praying all day, I mean, it sounds very much that you are focused and driven into action through your prayer. I mean, Ms. G, I'm sure care for our common home, earth is probably a really important thing. And then not just feeding the poor, but like battling injustice in our country and poverty. And it sounds like it's the contemplative life, but it's also the active life as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna say, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, if we really think of St. Francis and what he was doing, and his initial story, like he was such, he just went against the grain, right? Like he really challenged the church at the time, and I think it's really just inspiration for us, especially during these times. There's just so much, I don't know, turmoil, and it's so hard to sometimes feel like we have the ability to speak up. And so I think he does that for us. He gives us that courage in his example. So yeah.
There's a story I read in the life of St. Francis also. I remember when he was starting his order, he was really torn because he had a desire for a deep prayer life, but also felt this call to go out to preach the gospel, to serve the poor. And I remember it was just interesting seeing that tension existed in Francis himself. I mean, we think of sometimes the Franciscans as going out in action, serving the poor, but it's something that was definitely grounded in a deep prayer life. So it's both you were alluding to. It's a form of prayer, a prayer life that helps draw us, connect us to Christ, but also that sends us out too. So.
Yeah, it is. There's a tension there, and I think sometimes in the United States we forget that you can live in tension, and tension can be a good thing. Yeah, it's the Catholic. It's the both and. It's not either or. And Francis was very passionate about being faithful to the Pope, being faithful to the Church, being faithful to priests. There was different heresies going on at the time, and he was very strict about. He didn't have any time for people that were heretics. He would talk to them and everything, and he would talk to them in a kind and loving manner. But as a humble person, he wouldn't put them down or tell them how to live. He understood that they had to make their own choices on how to live. And that's kind of a tough thing sometimes for us to accept, is everybody's got their own path. We've got to take our path, but then, I mean, even my wife, my 2 kids, they have to take their own path. It's like a parent. Your kid starts to grow up, and you realize they have to start making their decisions. That's not always easy to let go.
Ms. G, I'm sure you see that for all your students as well. They're all in your classroom and they're all doing their own different path, and yet you want to guide them towards the joy of knowledge and education.
Oh yeah, 100%. It is a challenge for sure, because you know that you have to love them first, right? In order for them to be open to receiving Christ, right? And so you just try to cultivate that as best as possible. Don't shy away from the truth, right? Speak to the truths of the church and all of that. We have to stand firm in our faith, of course. But I think, at least in the years I've been teaching, you see that change, their own hearts converting, right? It goes from just gaining this knowledge in religion class and theology class and actually going, oh, I actually want that relationship with Christ, right? Like I get to choose it. And so it's been a beautiful witness, right, to the faith in the church. I have hope for the future, right? Just what I've seen. I know I like to bring a lot of my ideas and passions, but it's good to see. Sorry, as you guys know, I have a dog in here, and so I apologize if you hear.
I think it's very Franciscan of you.
Yeah, it is very Franciscan.
Talking about
She's
creation,
fostering, and that's part of this journey here right now.
We got a dog here with us.
Yeah, I have a dog too, but I'm at the office, so I'm back at home.
But yeah, I think when they see your passion and your excitement for the faith, it gets them excited. And so I know where I'm at, just giving the students opportunity to create their own service projects, and tied into, say, a saint like St. Francis. They actually run with it. We've seen a lot of cool things. More environmental because it's a little bit more achievable, but we got recycling in our whole school. And we're out fixing up our garden that we have in our outdoor chapel. So they're open to receiving this and actually just living the faith in their own way.
One more thing on this. We talked about the benefits of being part of community earlier, and it sounds like when you're standing up against all the darkness and pain in the world, what can you do? However, if you're part of a community and rooted in Christ and you can do it together, that's really cool.
Yes. Go together and strengthen together. Then as we do at the end of Mass, we go forth after we're together. And
I know I'm not the guest speaking about Franciscan spirituality, but I'll just add, since I have a affinity for St. Francis too, one dimension of Franciscan spirituality that I'm really drawn to, and you both alluded to this, but if one were to summarize, it is hard to summarize. There's so much to him, but one word that comes to mind, of course, is poverty. There's various dimensions of that, which is that living simply, that serving the poor, but especially one. What really personally for me really drew me to St. Francis was what shaped his poverty wasn't just being poor for its own sake, but precisely in following Christ in his self-emptying, right? It's Christ's poverty that he's following. So looking at creation and recognizing this almighty, all-powerful, beautiful, wondrous creator God, and that God would lower himself so much, would empty himself. That is the poverty, the self-emptying, all the way to the point of the cross, right? And
that's why you see the Tau cross with the T, and you'll see the crossed arms in front of it with the stigmata. One is Francis's arm, you see it in the sleeve, and the other one is Jesus's arm. And Francis really wanted to emulate Jesus, and that's probably why he ended up with the stigmata, is he said, I want to be like you.
For our listeners, can you explain what the stigmata is?
The stigmata, and he's not the only one that I've had at Padre Pio, who lived in Italy pretty recently, actually. It is a person that has the marks of the cross on them, so they have marks on their hands and wrists where the nails were, and their feet, and then there's also a wound in their side, and they never heal. they bleed, and I don't know what to say. It's like, wow, the person was Padre Pio and Francis were so close to Christ and had emptied themselves so much that he gave them this gift, and they understood that they could suffer, and Jesus suffered for us, because in suffering for us, he not only breaks open the gates of hell, but everything that we suffer, he knows. He was there. Jesus suffered that, and more. So it's literal the marks of, and the people that have examined him say, it bleeds, and and it never heals.
What are the Italians doing that we're not doing?
They were both Italian, weren't they?
They were both Italian. I don't remember who else has had them. I don't think it's.
But yeah, so these wounds of Christ that miraculously appear in the body of the person, they receive in their body these marks of the wounds. Yeah. And we might add, along Christ crucified. So St. Francis received the stigmata. There's also the famous story that it was from an image of Christ on the cross, the San Damiano cross.
Yes.
He heard the word spoken to him, rebuild my church. And that's kind of what, for as you can see, it's falling into ruins. And that's part of what inspired him to go forth. So there's a lot of these connections to the cross.
They moved the cross into a bigger church where the sisters are today in Assisi, but that chapel, they have a replica of it, is still there. It's like a 5-foot tall cross. And it has all this. If you look up San Damiano cross, just the imagery in it is beautiful. It's very Eastern Catholic Orthodox in its styling. But what he did is we talk about Eucharistic adoration, he basically did that with the cross and also with the Eucharist, where he would pray, and that would be his focal point.
Veneration of the cross, we might say.
We've established the orders and the history of St. Francis, and we've established that it is, in fact, a very good thing to be part of community, that it overlaps and feeds into all the other communities in your life. And if it's not obvious, I want to reiterate as much as possible that lay people are doing this. And so what would you suggest, our dear guests, if someone listening right now wanted to either learn a little bit more about what it's like to be a secular Franciscan, or if they actually wanted to join, what would you recommend that they do, or where should they go?
You can go first, Miss G.
Okay. Thank you. So the Sisters of St. Francis, actually, I would say everyone's hopefully technology savvy, but they actually have a website where you can get some information. So there is a coordinator for the associates. So if you were to visit the osfdbq.org, you're able to search for associates, and there's like an interest page, and you would just reach out to the coordinator, and they would know immediately, right? Like if there's a group in your area, or if you can join in online, like via Zoom or something. But I'd say that's the easiest, and that's if like you don't know someone, right? Like if you don't know someone that is in a group, I mean, I'd say you can reach out to me if you're interested, and I can help set that up. But I'd say going there is the easiest to just find out, what you can do and to be part of it, because there's a lot of groups, I'll say that. So I'm sure anyone with interest would be able to easily learn about becoming a Franciscan associate.
Yeah, that's what my fraternity says. And we still do a lot of things with St. Mary's down in Waterloo. Our formation, we still link that up. But yeah, going to a meeting, seeing what it's all about, meeting the people, seeing if it's a good fit for you. If you go to queenofpeaceregion.org, that will give you, you'll be able to find in Iowa, the Mason City St. Bonaventure group, or if you're in Minnesota, the Dakotas, Nebraska, La Crosse, any of those groups. And that's really what we encourage is people just come and try it out. It might not be for you, and that's fine. If it is for you, that's great, and we'll walk along the path with you. Another website you can go to, which is the Secular Franciscan Order for the United States, is secularfranciscanusa.org, and that has all sorts of resources in it.
And I'm sure we will have all these links in the show notes for
You
our
betcha.
listeners. So one final question before we wrap up here. So maybe they're interested in learning. They're not sure about the groups, but they at least want to learn more about St. Francis and or his spirituality. And I'm sure there are many resources, but what is like one resource or one book per se, or maybe that you think is a good introduction to either St. Francis or Franciscan spirituality that you would recommend to listeners if they want to learn more?
Deacon, I'll let you go first on this one.
St. Bonaventure wrote The Life of Francis of Assisi, and St. Bonaventure was a second generation Franciscan, and he was a person that had an association with another Dominican. And when they were both at the University of Paris, they received their doctorates on the same day, and I'm guessing one of the priests can guess on who that is.
Are you speaking of St. Thomas Aquinas, Deacon Jim Wolf?
I am speaking of St. Thomas Aquinas. So there was a linkage there. And so Bonaventure actually was able to talk to some of the older friars that were still living that had known Francis. And he also went through all of the things that have been written up to that point. So that's one that's been around since the 1200s.
So just to clarify, St. Dominic and St. Francis, they were kind of buddies with different spiritualities and different communities. And then you have St. Bonaventure and St. Thomas Aquinas, and they're kind of buddies, different spiritualities, different communities, but all part of the big family, the many parts of the body of Christ of the church.
And another Franciscan that's a modern American would be Father Benedict Rochelle. And he has a lot of books that are very good. And of course, he writes from the Franciscan perspective, being a Franciscan friar and priest.
Rosie, what's a book? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to share a book that was recommended by a friend called My God and My All, The Life of St. Francis of Assisi. I think if you're just kind of wanting to get to know him and kind of, get his history, his story, what the spirituality is about, some of the people, that followed him or were influenced by him, I think that's kind of like a good starter for just an introduction on who he was. Because you could sit here and talk about his life forever, right? Because there's so much to him. But I think that's just kind of a good basic, kind of helps guide, if this is maybe the spirituality that it's calling you or not, right?
So there are ways you can live in these different spiritualities within our archdiocese. We will have future episodes talking about other spirituality groups, all that exists right here in the Archdiocese of Dubuque. So thank you, both of you. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Deacon Jim, for being a part of this, for sharing these your thoughts on these Franciscan groups and Franciscan spirituality. It is much appreciated. We're glad you're here. So thank you for being here, both of you.
Thank you for inviting us to speak.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you for letting us be part of your community as well.
Yes, we started our own little community here now too with you listeners, as listeners of the Dubuque Revival podcast. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will all see you in the Eucharist.
All right, God bless.
Wow, great job, everybody. I have no idea what happened to the image.
Video.
Is it gone for you too?
Yeah, the video disappeared.
Okay, I think it's an hour time limit. I'm still working on that and not being angry about it. Wow, that was that was so good, you two. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes.
An invite, yeah. So I could join one of these if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a Catholic priest.
Yes.
Yep.
Whoa, and it doesn't, like, you're obviously married, Deacon Jim, and
yes,
so you can join this, and it doesn't, like, wow, this is.
Well, yeah, it's lay people. I mean, doesn't matter. Married, single, if you're not part of a religious order. So as diocesan clergy, we all can do that. Saint John Vianney was a secular Franciscan.
Yeah.
And then at when you get your admission to the order, you get to put the OFS behind your name.
Oh, okay. That's what that means. Yeah.
That's what that means.
And remember,
that's the Latin. That's why it doesn't look like it's in the right order.
Father Jacob, we are secular priests.
Yes.
So we can join the secular order.
Yes.
Oh, that's
in the olden
right.
term, instead of saying diocesan priests, they would call us secular priests.
Yes.
As opposed to religious priests.
Do you guys have habits? You like suit up like Batman if someone needs?
No, we're laity.
No habits. Okay.
No habits.
Sorry, Father Jacob. Where were these questions in the podcast?
I was trying to keep it together. Like I didn't want to overwhelm. You also did very well because Miss G, I'm sure you can appreciate the type of questioning where you want to lead them on. But part of it was like I want to know too. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
in the future, feel free to ask such questions.
Yeah. Okay. I duly noted. Thank you.
Yes. Your closest fraternity would be either Mason City or Waterloo. Well, maybe Dubuque. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to have Kevin stay on the call, or maybe I'll call him, but you all are free to go. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Many blessings.
I'm still here.
Okay, yep.
Okay, I am signing off.
Okay, bye.
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 Good.